Okay, hello everyone and welcome. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today with the topic, the parts department is carrying more profit than you think. I'm excited to introduce Kevin Gribble, the dealership expert who spent his career inside RV dealership figuring out exactly where parts profit gets lost and how the best dealer are getting it back. Today, he's breaking down how to stop duplication and emergency order from eating your margin, how to catch that stock before it comes to a write-off, and how to turn your counter team into sellers instead of orders takers. Just a quick couple notes before we dive in. We will record this session and you will get a link by email within 24 hours. There will be a lot of content that Kevin wants to share with you today, so please drop your questions in the Q&A box anytime. If Kevin cannot get to these at the end, we'll follow up personally on anything we miss. And last thing, please stick around after the webinar for a quick survey. It's the way that, it shapes what we cover next, and we will appreciate your 2 cents. So hand out the stage to you, Kevin.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Gribble. I'm one of the account managers at IDS. I spent a few years in a dealership up in the Pacific Northwest, and so kind of spent a lot of time looking and seeing what is happening in dealerships. And now I spend a lot of time in a lot of dealerships, so seeing exactly what they're doing and which dealerships and what they do when you have a highly effective parts department versus a parts department that is kind of a department that's used but not brought to its full value. So I'm going to kind of swap between a deck and hop into the actual system, because I think when I looked at the attendance list, it seemed that a lot of people were current dealers, and I wanted to make sure that they get some straightforward information out of this. So yeah, so I'm going to pop out of my deck already here and swap over. So we are going to talk about specifically duplicate parts and emergency orders, seasonal mins and maxes, catching dead stock, and opportunities for upselling. So one of the first things that I wanted to talk about specifically is using the system to understand what you're ordering and where you get that information. So there's a few different places to get that information. Specifically is using all of the reporting for time periods. So one here is just one of the parts reports, and seeing that this parts report isn't just static, it is a interactive document. So if I highlight this part and right click, I can actually go into that part of the system and open that part. So using the reporting for how it sits and getting the most value out of the reporting, I can also export this report into Excel to analyze it. And I can also go into some of our advanced reporting and look at parts turns. So this would be an example of our Leadership Insights tool that has our parts turns report on it. And I can do things like hop into Copilot and ask it questions about parts and how they're turning as well. So one of the things that I see in a dealership that is used the least, and I think it has some of the most value, is the parts manager. And so one of the things that I really like to do is show that this is an active parts movement report. And so we can see, all right, well, here's all of the parts that have moved in the last, in this case, in our demo account for the last year. But also I can actually start to isolate what parts I want to look at. So if I want to look at by vendor, I can come in and say, okay, well, I want to look at vendor 242. I just double click on that and it brings me and just shows me that one vendor. I can take this and export it to Excel. This would be the same as a parts movement report as well. So instead of me going in and running a report, I'm actually looking at this in real time. So I can always come in here and build this view out as I want to see it. And then once you have a view that you like, you start moving columns around, you resize columns, etc. You come in here, you view name, you hit give it a name, and then hit save. And now I have that view as a dropdown, and I can actually share that view out between users as well. So if I want to share this out to my parts department, I can give that view and then give every parts advisor that view as well. One of the things that I really wanted to talk about is the value of building a part from day one, with as much information as possible, because the more information you build in that screen, the more value you're going to get for years to come. So one of the things that I really wanted to go into here is just the parts maintenance screen and just talk about it for a second. So one of the things that that we see a lot is I have a part on hand, I have the part sitting on my shelf, but it's a water pump, let's say, and I've got that water pump is the same water pump that I have sitting on the shelf, but I order a new one because I look it up and, oh, turns out the Lippert water pump isn't the same part number. And so I've got one sitting on the shelf ready to go, but I go ahead and order one. Now I've duplicated order, I've slowed down my rec time. There's all sorts of things that go along with that. And it really starts out from building that parts file day one. So when I start a part, and either if you're multi-location or single location, it's all the same at this point. I want to make sure that I am categorized or capturing my UPC vendor is super important, and using this to tie everything back to. And then also when I build a part and I look up that water pump for the first time, to make sure I'm searching my parts file and seeing if I already have that water pump on hand from somebody else and building it into the current part that already exists versus creating a new part. One of the very unique pieces about our system that that is specific to the RV industry is that scenario alone. And I have a parts department, or I have a part that I can order from 5 different vendors. It's the exact same part, and I need to tie them together in true relational status. So when I look at suppliers, I want to have a UPC vendor, and that's typically going to be whoever I get it from is going to have the same UPC code. But also making sure that I am bringing in my, if I get it from NTP, coming here and saying, well, okay, great, I'm going to get that same thing from Keystone, and then giving it the same, Keystone part number and bringing in the same way. Once you start to do this, and over time, this will start to pay out value, and it will keep paying out value for the foreseeable future. So it's something that I see a lot of dealers who they either have a messy parts file or they have a parts file that is that they just don't see the value. They're trying to move quick. They're trying to get that part in. And instead of spending that extra 30 seconds to build this out properly or do an extra search or see if it's related to a different part, they are just creating a new part, moving on with their day. And now they're going to end up with a messier parts file moving forward. One of the other things that I really like to show in here is setting up mins and maxes. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but why this is really valuable. This will prompt the system to automatically order parts for you. Well, not for you, but prompt you to build a PO. And if you're ordering it from NTB, you can do that. But my whole point being is if I set these up now, and especially front counterparts, anything that's in the front showroom or front of the house, I want to set up mins and maxes for. And there's a lot of reasons why, but specifically it's so that if I sell out of that 50 amp cord or something that is very critical to me keeping the business going, the system is telling me, hey, you've gone below that minimum amount, you need to order more. And I'll show that in a second. The last thing that I really want to show is parts group. I think that my most highly effective dealers use parts group thoroughly. This can be as simple or as advanced as you want it to be. You can say, great, I want to have all my awnings categorized as a group. I want to have my, my water pumps categorized as a group, whatever you want to do here. But it can be as simple as these are the parts that I want to keep a min max on, right? It could be as simple as that. These are up to you. Just make sure if you're a Canadian dealer that if you do create a new parts group, you see your import factor and make sure your import factors are set properly so you're not bringing in US parts incorrectly. So that's just one of the things that I like. When I see the most clean parts departments, one of the first things they do is they start grouping their parts. And it pays off in benefits down the line through and through. So there is a few different things in here, but also coming in and knowing that you have all these tabs down here and actually exploring them. A lot of people will say, I want to stock adjust something, but I don't know where to do that. Well, just knowing that this exists and how it works and asking questions to support, and asking questions of the customer portal. Those kind of things will really explore what does stock adjustment mean, those kind of things, and how it works and what's the output, so that I know when I do stock adjust that I get some value out of it. So just for the sake of time, we could talk about this screen all day long. Just for the sake of time, we'll keep going though. So hold on, let me get my list up here so I make sure I'm not missing stuff. So the next thing I want to talk about is what's this? Is the master parts file. So one of the things to understand about the master parts file, especially if you're a multi-location environment, is I'm effectively building a parts file that sits above my parts file and is referenceable. So the idea is if I bring in a part and I don't sell that part for a year, I don't have to actually delete that part of my part out of my system. I won't view it anymore. But if I need to reference it, I need to look at it, I can view it at the master parts level, and it will automatically come back in if I restock that part. And I was talking to Andrea earlier today about this whole thing, and one of her recommendations, and I found this fascinating, and I don't think anyone I know is doing this, is using the delete parts routine to build out or to move your parts into your master parts file. So before you do an inventory, you want to come in here, and I know that delete parts routine is a really a misnomer on names, but specifically is coming in here, filling it all out, and then move deleted parts to master parts file. Is what you're going to do. I don't think there's any reason to ever delete a part. And what this specifically is going to do is going to say, okay, great, I have a part that is any part that's moved less than one time in the last 6 months. I want it to move to my master parts file. And so it will take it out of my current inventory so I don't view it. When I look up a part, it won't show up unless I specifically search the master parts file. But if I bring in that part, let's say it's that same water pump, and I bring that water, haven't sold it for 6 months, or did a parts cleanup and brought it back in, the parts file will remerge, and it will bring in that parts file, and you'll get your history back, you'll get your parts file back, and it will tie out to all your other stores. So it's just important to run that. And I don't think I see almost any dealers doing this on a regular cadence. And you can do this as often as you want. You can do this all day long, but I would say definitely before you do a year-end count, now's the time to talk about that. So that's the way the master part effectively works. One of the things that we do recommend is if you're bringing in a part and you're searching up a part, let's say it's that same water pump, and I need to search up, okay, do I have this water pump in stock from a different vendor? I search my part. Okay, I don't have that part in my file. Before I create a new part, do a quick search in your master parts file to see if it's already there, so that you don't have to go in and have it prompt you to bring that part back in. So, and then once again, the file that goes up to the master parts file is automatic. So if I create a part or do anything like that, it will actually bring up to the master parts file automatically. So the next part of this, based on groups, is start talking about seasonal mins and maxes. And this, I think, is also a very underused part of the system, is having the system forecast for me or change my mins and maxes. And you can do this monthly, you can do this yearly, you can do this as often as every 2 weeks. And so when I set up mins and maxes, I can come in here and say, okay, great, I want to actually reduce my mins and maxes by X number of percent. So instead of me going into every part that I need to change and saying in summer, I keep 50 amp cords on hand, I want to reduce that. Great, I'll reduce that by a percentage. And now all of my front counterpart gets reduced, and I'm ordering less based on the recommended values. And I'll show that in just a second. So in here, there's a document that we can send out that kind of explains this screen in depth and exactly how it works and exactly what will happen if you use it and exactly how you revert it. Because anytime you're changing parts in bulk, you want to make sure that there's a reverse to this, because it's one of those things. It will do exactly what you tell it to do. But one of the things I didn't know about this until today is I can actually come in here and say change settings for all groups, because right now I'm looking at groups and some people are like, well, is it, what if I don't have a part in a group? Well, you can change settings for parts with no group. So just know that exists. And so from there, I am going to hop back to this screen and just talk about the piece of the system I see that people don't even know exist until I show it to them, and they're like, well, that's actually pretty cool. And so down here, we have the parts needed tab, and we have the obsolete overstock tab. So parts needed, I can choose by vendor, I can choose by group, and what I can come in here and say, if I'm using the special order system, let's see if I have any in here. So I don't have any in this, or that I need to order for special order, but at the end of the day, if I need to order 5 or 6 parts that are coming from special orders and coming from work orders and coming from front counter, and I'm going to do 1 order a day for NTP, I actually can come in here and say, great, select my special orders, and it will tell me what I need to order based on that. We can also come in here and say select parts with on hand below minimum quantity. So this is the real value of setting up mins and maxes. What it's telling me right now is my front counterparts, that 50 amp cord, and I want to keep 15 on hand, let's say, and I sell below 15. It's going to come in here and tell me, hey, you got to order 2 more to get back to the minimum. Or you can order all the way to maximum. So let's say we're going into a busy season and I want to make sure that we are overstocked for a little bit. I can order up to the maximum. And then from here, I could say, great, I'm going to go ahead and create a PO to all of these. And what it will do is now it's going to create a PO for all of these vendors. So it's actually going to create 1, 2, 3, 4 different POs for me and automatically put these parts on those POs. So it's just saving the time and I'm being able to bulk order. And these are driven by what parts are the main part within the parts description. I'm sorry, the maintain parts. Next stage, you'd hit create append purchase order, and this will either create a new purchase order, but I can also append a purchase order. So if I have a purchase order that's open and I want to add it to it, I can do it in bulk as well. I can also bulk transfer parts if I'm needing to do that. And then we can also, the next thing that I want to show is obsolete parts. This is also something that a lot of people don't know that exists. And so I can give it criteria and I want to say, great, show me all of my obsolete parts based on the criteria of not sold since and not received prior to. Sometimes this is going to be a really big file. It will tell you that it's going to be a big file and it's going to take a second. But once I have this, I can do kind of a few different really neat things. Specifically, I can set sale prices from here and put all of these parts on sale. Or I can scrap these parts and stock adjust them automatically. Or I can create a return PO. A lot of people don't realize, and talk to your NTP rep and talk to your vendors about this. At least at our dealership, we would set up return POs on occasion. So we knew that NTP would allow us to return parts within 1 year for a stock credit. So what we do is we'd say, great, anything that's about to age out, we'll actually return, get that stock credit, and honestly reorder if we need to, but that keeps the parts fresh. And it returns anything that we didn't think we thought we were going to sell and didn't sell. So we can shift that value to another part of the parts team or parts inventory. So it's just one of those things that a lot of people don't use. And I find it really valuable, and it gives you just that extra bit. Let's see here. So one of the things that I really like to show is to identify obsolete and overstock parts using this. And you can also export this to Excel, but also using the reports. Or we can show here, things that my parts inventory review and see anything. And this is a report in the system too. So don't think this is the only place we can see it, but also knowing that these parts are aged. What do I want to do with these? Do I want to try to sell them? Do I want to continue to sell them? But understanding that this part was received on a certain date and really sold on a certain date. So it's just one of those things, like paying attention to this specifically will add a ton of value. Let's see here. before I forget, I asked Allison what was her number one thing. If I were to tell all parts teams what provides value, and her being an accountant said, making sure, and I say this to all of my dealers, but making sure that all the dealers out there know that this is available and has been available for quite some time, is having the automatic payable creation on parts received turned on. What this will do is when I receive a part, so instead of me sending an invoice over to the accounting team to create an invoice automatically or manually, where they're going in and doing this, what it will do is when I receive that part, and let's say I received 3 of 5, it will create a payable for that um, for that uh, for that received part. And so instead of having the duplicate entry of going in and writing out that received part, it just generates it for them. And from the accounting side is they effectively in their accounts payable manager see that that part came in, needs to be paid. They'll still have to verify it. They can change everything that they need to change, but it automatically adds the invoice number, the invoice amount, and the freight to it. And so that then they can do their payment without having to actually go in and write any fields. And very quickly, just to show how that works, is in here, admin, and more than likely the accounting team will have to set this up. But while I'm in here, I'm going to have my rant about parts module. Parts configurations is always open on my other screen. So if I go into parts, there's 2 in here. It's 51 and 93. Just so we talk about it. Create payable when PO is complete. Switch to PR. This is partially received, means it will create a payable for every receiving session you do. And then 93 is your GL account for your freight expense. So when I put in the freight line that I'm accepting it for $200 in freight or whatever it is, it will add that to the payable line and then expense it out to the right account. And just a quick once over on configurations specifically, and this is huge to understanding your parts system and how the parts system works. And I recommend that all of the parts managers sit down with your controller once a year and audit this. If I go into the module configurations, this is how I want the system to act within the parts module alone. So we're not talking about, there's a lot of configurations in the system, and the system is very configurable. So one of the things to know is there's 105 configurations on parts alone. So just know that this exists. Know that there's configurations out there. If you want to change something, it might be something as simple as enable duplicate parts check, or it might be something like I want to see the parts cleanup utility, and we could talk about that all day long. So just know that that's something that exists, and you should be at least aware of that. The next thing I want to show is the parts cleanup utility, actually. So one of the things that we added in one of the last releases is the parts cleanup utility. This is something you do have to go turn on. So it's not going to show it for you. You have to go into the configs and turn this on. Email support if you need instructions. But what this does is based on a algorithm, and there's 3 different algorithms, but based on duplicate UPC code or there's a couple different ones. It's going to show me, hey, this part, it looks like it's this part over here. And so what we're saying is we have 2 different vendors for the exact same part in this scenario. So in here, I can come in here and say target part and merge part and create a scheduled merge. The scheduled merge will run overnight at midnight, and it won't run during your day, because as you probably know, if I run a parts merge during the day when people are operating in the system, you end up getting locks because somebody is using that part or it's moving in some way. So one of those things that add to scheduled merge, it will now run overnight. So when you come in the next morning, you can add a bunch of parts to it, and those parts will be merged when you come in the next morning. And so the next thing that I want to show, we're already getting low on time here. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is conduct a parts count, just so everyone knows you're able to do parts counts in mobile now, and I highly recommend it. I've got glowing feedback on this. Is I can create a parts count or a cycle count, and I highly recommend you're doing cycle counts. And my favorite parts manager out there in the world does a cycle count a day. They just choose a bin, they do a cycle count, and just it takes them 15 minutes. But when they do their year-end count, there isn't surprises. They're not running into crazy surprises. They know what's on their shelf. They know what they can use. They can trust their parts file. When they come in and say, how many do I have on hand? I can actually believe that, which is kind of the first thing of having a system. And a lot of people are like, well, you know, I use it, but I just really use it to receive parts, and I sell into the negative on hand and all of those things. And it's because I have no idea what's actually on my shelves until we get to a year-end parts count. And then I'm super confident about it for 3 weeks. And then that kind of just goes out the window. And it's because I'm not doing the little bit of legwork on the front end to make sure I have a clean parts file. Let's see here. So let me hop in because we're kind of getting out to the end here. So one of the things I do want to talk about, and it's kind of outside of the system, but there's ways to categorize it within the system, and we could talk about this all day long, is the competitive advantage you have over Amazon is your knowledge, is knowing that what I have or what a part is and where to get it and finding the most value and being able to understand that like this part is, yeah, you can get it off Amazon, but we're the trusted source on this part specifically. And we're the trusted source on, you know, that quality service. And this means upsales. So, you know, saying, hey, you should get this water pump, but here's a better water pump. Or here's an awning, you know, you have your slide toppers, you just spent $100,000 on this unit. You really should get slide toppers or max air vent covers or inline surge protectors. And so knowing that you trust your parts inventory, but also knowing that you're the expert, you're the source of truth for these guys. And people want that. My parents bought an RV recently. And one of the things they said is they're like, well, I need this weird cover for a thing. And they're like, well, we tried to search online, couldn't find it, got really frustrated. But I went back to my selling dealer and they were able to help me out. And so now, just out of complete and utter loyalty, now they're buying parts from that dealer. So just know that that is true. And being knowledgeable in your space and understanding the part system is something that a lot of people are used to are looking for, because if they're out there, you know, in the world of Amazon and whatnot, they're going to end up frustrated, and they want that source of truth. So I recommend highly that that's the way you see yourself. And we could talk about upsells in different parts of the system. But one thing that I see most of my dealers doing, especially at walkthroughs, is walking them around the parts department. They buy a unit, they're doing a walkthrough, spending 15 minutes saying, all right, come on over to the parts department. Let's talk about the things you need. Let's talk about the things that you should bring with you tonight. You're going to go camping for the first time. You may have never had an RV before. Making sure you get your water hose. It's not something you think about until you need one. Your toilet paper, your inline surge protectors, you know, these kind of things where you're like, these have a lot of value and they're worth bringing up in the conversation and using every point to bring value to the parts department. It's not just I call warranty the caboose of service, because it's not just the place that everything kind of ends up that you don't know what to do with. And I think that's the same with parts. Parts is a necessary piece of the business, and I don't think it gets enough attention. And you know, I lovingly know a bunch of partners who would agree with me, and those are the people that see the value in it and where it can make money. So with that, we are hitting our time limit of the quick 30 minutes we have. Let me see if there's any questions real quick. Let's see.
Yeah, currently we don't have any questions going through, but if you have any, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A box.
Let me throw up my slide here in case you have any questions. See if any came in here. Okay, well, we are at 10:30, and so I will, unless there's any questions or anyone wants to stay on and ask questions, I'm more than happy to do that, but let me know if there's anything you want to go over, and I will send out that document for the seasonal mins and maxes with this presentation as well.
Perfect. Seems like, oh, there's one hand raised.
Oh, I think you have to put it in the chat.
Yes. Actually, Rachel, let's see. Okay, I think, yeah, Rachel, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can ask her to unmute herself. If she want to ask any question or else.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Hi.
Okay, hi. Hello. So I always have trouble trying to figure out what dates to put in for my obsolete dates when I'm trying to configure that list. Sorry, let me pull it up so I can look at that and read. So when I'm in Parts Manager and then obsolete overstock parts, the not sold and received prior to. I don't know why, but my brain has such trouble with trying to figure out what dates to use. They always want to fight.
Yeah, so I would say your not sold since is always your kind of go-to, and I would put my not received prior to kind of farther out. I can set them the same, but what it really kind of depends on what you're looking for. Some people will. This is one of those things that every dealership I talk to sees this a little bit differently. But what I'm really looking for is what parts have not moved out of my system in a year specifically, or 3 years. Those are kind of the metrics that we measure by, is a year, 2 years, 3 years. If it hits 3 years, most dealers, I would say, and maybe not all, but would say that that is dead inventory. I need to get it off my shelves, even if I'm going to put it in the dumpster. And
Right.
you're not worried about the receive date for that. You're just looking for what part hasn't sold. Like I can get this one, weird doodad, but if I'm selling this weird doodad all the time, even though I received it 5 years ago, but I consistently sell one or two of them for a year,
Okay.
that's the most important metric. So the receive to is a nice to have, but it's really just showing like how often is this? I mean, really, because the question is how often is the part turning, right? How often is if I bought 50 of them on accident, which we did this once. We bought, I think it was like 100 generators. It was some obscene number. It was an accident. And the thing though is so we received them, but we sold them off for 3 years consistently. It was great. I mean, they were a great thing to have on hand, especially because it was right before COVID. So generator prices skyrocketed all of a sudden. It was a happy mistake.
Yeah.
So we didn't care that the part was received a year before or 2 years before. What we cared about is, even though I had 100 of them, that those parts were still continuously going off the shelf. And so that's kind of the way I see it. But this is one that, if you, I've definitely had spirited debates on what we consider an obsolete part.
So if I'm trying to use this to see, like you were saying for NTP things, just even sold. So, okay, let me see. So things that are, I can't really narrow it down to tell me things that are only in that 11th month, can I?
Are you talking about 11-month, like?
I bought 11 months ago, but I haven't sold yet.
Oh, so you would just set it to not sold since, and then moved your receive date way back, and then you just switch your not sold since to, let's say in this case, it would be let's say September 1st of 2025. My demo account doesn't have good data in it, so I can't really I can run it, but it's not going to come up with relevant data. But so that's what I would do for that 11th month. And then, but typically I would start with 3 years. Say, what do I have sitting on my shelf? Because what it probably means is I'm not doing cycle counts or year-end counts if I have something that's been here for 3 years and has not sold. And start there. Start as far back as you're willing to go. Because if I have a part on my shelf that's been sitting here for 3 years, there isn't value. That part is dead. There's no. It means what it means. It means I'm ordering parts for parts I have, if that's the case. So it's either they get moved, they get put into a scrap bin, they get sold and put into a bin for a sale, whatever you want to do. But start at 3 years and then start to move it up and get closer and closer to real time. And then say, okay, great. We consider an obsolete part to be a year old. Now what hits this report, and run it monthly. And there's
Right.
other.
And I can totally see the value in that, but on the opposite side, shouldn't I try to get things that are about to expire first?
Oh, yeah. So I would definitely say, and then you can run a report to and from date. So if we go in and run an actual report, we're going over time here. So if you want to run, this is where I would actually go into the parts report and run the part report if you're looking for a to and from date. This screen is going to show you this day and before because I can action on it. But then I would go in and run the it's the parts movement report. It's the one I actually pulled. It'd be the obsolete parts report. So you can use the parts movement report and set a date to say what parts haven't moved within this time period, or the obsolete parts report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Kevin, we have 2 questions coming in.
Yeah. Oh, I'm pulling them up now here. How do I create a special order without asking for a payment up front? This is a config. So just Michelle. So this is what she's explaining, and let me hop into it real quick, very quickly. So if I go to point of sale, sell parts, and I am selling a special order, this is a config. If I want the system to require a payment for a special order, my argument would always be that you do require a payment for a special order. And the reason why is because customer comes in and says, order me a fridge. I'm going to say, great, I will order you a fridge. Customer then never comes back in. And now I have bought a fridge that is going to end up being obsolete because it's for a specific unit for a specific problem. But that's what she's asking for is we come in here and go into special orders here, it's going to require a payment. So that's the system is requiring it. This is just a config within, when I talked about those module configs, that's one of the configs. And you can do it by full amount, or you can actually do it by percentage. I want them to put 50% down. And then they're paying, you're covering some of your costs, but you may not be asking for all of it. But when they come back in, the benefit of this is it applies the money to their receivable account. So when they come back in and they need to balance out because they bought a piece of trim for $15 and the shipping was $500, which you've all seen before, it will ask for the full amount because you do want to do assumed freight when you're doing special orders on the front counter. So, and we'll follow up and get that exact config number for you, Michelle. In parts maintenance, does it count parts on an estimate being as available? No. I will go double check this, but the way I understand it is estimated parts are committed parts, they're required parts. So they are showing as committed. I'm sorry. Actually, I misread that. I read that backwards. So parts on an estimate are considered required. So they are showing up as committed. They do not, if I am using just committed, it will allow me to sell that part. It does not take it out of on-hand quantity until I put it into actual. If I'm using the special order process, it will same thing. The part will stay in your inventory until it's moved to actual. But if I use the special order process, it will give me a warning saying that this part has been allocated to a customer. So hopefully that answers your question, honey. because those fields can be a little bit confusing, and I would recommend highly, if you want to know exactly how those fields work, because they're kind of nuanced, the committed, the on hand, the SO committed, etc. Get with support and have them deep dive into them, because those are super valuable fields, but you do need to understand the details of how they work. Hopefully that helps answer your question. Okay. Well, we're over time, but there's not any other questions.
Yeah, there's not any other questions so far, but I think this is great. Like you can have, like a live interaction.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what I love doing. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, if anyone has any other questions, throw them in the chat right now, and we can at least get them quantified and sent back to you if you need to answer for later.
Yep. Cool. Thanks a ton, Kevin, and thank you all for spending time with us. Again, as Kevin say, if you have any other questions or if you want to learn more about IDS, please feel free to email Kevin directly. His email was shown on the screen. We will also send an email within the next 24 hours with the webinar recording. Once you leave this webinar, again, a survey will appear on your screen, and we would appreciate if you could take a moment to complete it. Thank you, everyone, again, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.